Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create a Resident Evil clone in Unity, and welcome to episode 25. So in this tutorial what we're going to do is we're going to create a scene which allows us to have that door animation sequence that takes us from one room to the next. Don't forget, click the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So up until now we don't actually have a door in this game at all, but I want to have a door over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto our objects folder right here, and I'm going to drag and drop this wooden door into there. And you can get this wooden door if you head over to my website. The link is in the description. Head to downloads and assets and to the Resident Evil series and tutorial number 25, and you can download this door along with 2 audio files which we will import a little later on in this video. So I want the door to be just here. So what I'm going to do is in the folder, drag and drop this door into there and scale it upwards to probably about 20 by 20 by 20. Rotate by 90 degrees, and that looks about right. So we'll have it about there. Just going to bring it down to there. So it's kind of in line with the floor. Yep, that looks fine. So let's see how that looks in game. Just make sure we can physically see the door there. Yeah, so we can see that there is a door there. Excellent. So let's save this scene now, and now let's create that iconic scene where you transition from one room to the next via an opening and closing door. So to do that, we need to go to File and New Scene. And you'll be presented with this. And obviously, you've seen this before in pretty much any Unity project, default scene. So this particular scene we're going to use is going to be used for every single door. Although we're only putting a wooden door in it right now, we will switch in and out different doors. We'll always use this one single scene to move from one room to the next. And when we create the script for room control, it'll make a lot more sense. But for now, let's set the scene up. So it needs to be completely black with just the door in and obviously the animation and sounds. So to do that, we need to go to Window, we need to go to Rendering and Light Settings. And the skybox material we need to remove, just in case, because there's no point having a skybox on there if we don't need it. And change the ambient color to black if you want to. It doesn't really matter too. In fact, no, do you know what? We'll keep it as a nice gray just for now, and we'll change it on the camera. So on the main camera, change it from blue to black. And if we go to Game View, you can see we have a completely black screen. Next thing we need to do is re-import that door into this scene. So drag and drop, increase the size once again to 20 by 20 by 20, and zero out the position so it's dead center screen. Now the camera won't be able to see it all the way. I think it's probably a little too high for the camera. Yeah. So we just need to move our camera upwards so we can see it in the middle right there. Yeah, that looks fine. So the next thing to do is we need to unpack this prefab because we need to modify the contents of this prefab. So right click, unpack. Next thing we need to do is we need to create basically an object which allows us to pivot the door on the door handle. You can see that the door handle is there and P-cube is the door itself. But if we rotate, it pivots in the middle. So we need to change that. So let's go to Game Object, 3D Object and Cube. Let's zero out the position for that cube and then set it in place so as it's kind of dead center with the door. So about there. Basically, the center of the cube needs to be roughly where the door ends, so as that's where the door will pivot. So if we select door and P-cube 5 and then move them into that cube there, and then rotate cube, we should be able to see that the door swings open nicely. So then turn off the mesh renderer on the cube, and let's rename the cube to wooden door pivot. So how do we get this all working correctly? Well, easiest thing to do is create some animations. So let's go to animations folder, and then let's right click, create, and let's create a new folder specifically for doors. So we'll call it doors. And in here, we need to right click once again. In fact, no, we won't create a subfolder. I think we'll just keep everything in here, keep it fairly tidy. So let's go to wooden door pivot, which is that cube, remember. Go to animation, click on create, and what we'll do here is we will have it called, in fact we'll have it wooden, if I can actually get the caps lock working, my fault. Wooden door anim, and save. Next thing we need to do is click on the record button right there, the little red button, and set the first keyframe for this cube, which is going to be 0 on the Y rotation. So let's set it to 1 and then reset it back to 0, just so as we can set it right there. Next thing we need to do is I'm going to have this play over the course of maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. We'll see how it pans out. But for now, let's go to frame 120. And then let's set the Y to round about 80-ish. It doesn't matter if it's exactly 80 or not. We may adjust it a little later on. I just want to have that animation of the door opening. That's all that's important at the moment. So then we can click the red button again to stop. Let's head back to project, click on the wooden door animation and untick loop time. And now let's press play and see how that looks. Excellent. So we have the door opening animation. We don't actually need to create a door closing animation because that will always be behind us and we never actually see the door close. So the next thing to do is animate the main camera. And we're going to do this over probably a few seconds again, but we're going to do a lot of the timing via script. So for now, all we need to do is play walking up to the door slowly and then going through the door. So to do that, let's go to doors again and make sure we are in the same section. Click on main camera, animation, create, and we'll have this as cam walk anim. So like I say, we need to set it so as we walk a little slowly, stop for 2 seconds, and then walk through the door. So to do that, we're going to press play on there, and we're going to set the first keyframe. So this is mostly going to be done via the Z or Z axis right there. So we're going to walk through the door. So we need to set that first keyframe of what it currently is, which is -10. So -10. We'll take maybe 3 seconds to walk slowly to the door. So let's do frame 180. And we'll have moved just a little bit. So maybe about there. Then the door will open. So wherever we are set, right here, so -9.25. In fact, maybe we'll set that as 9 just for convenience sake. We need to be sat at -9 for 2 seconds while the door opens. So that means that we need to go to frame 300 and we need to set that as -9 again, just so as it stays still for those 2 seconds. And then we'll spend maybe 3 seconds going through the door. So we need to add another 180 to there. So 480 walking through the door. And stop that animation. Click on the cam walk anim and untick loop time. Now obviously this is going to look a bit weird because the door isn't going to open at the same time. The timing isn't right on both of these animations because we haven't scripted it yet, but let's just make sure that everything does work as intended. Okay, yep, that seems relatively okay. I'm wondering if we could raise the camera up a little bit and see how that looks. Oh, of course, we've got it set as in the animation. It's fine, let's not worry about that just for now. We can always adjust later on, but let's get timing and sound effects working correctly. So let's go to audio and let's go to effects, and we're going to bring in the door open and door close sound, and these should be in the zip file that you downloaded before along with the door. Let's go to main camera and create empty. I'm just going to call this FX, And then in effects, I'm going to create another object and call it door open, duplicate it and call it door close. And let's add those two sounds to the correct objects. And on them, just make sure we untick play on awake. So now we have our sound effects in place. Next thing we need to do is we need to make it so as everything is timed correctly. Now, what that means is that if we go to the wooden door pivot, go to Animator, and we now need to right click, create state, empty, and we need to right click and set as default state. And what this means is that this door will not open now because the animation for it isn't in place. Which, yep, there we go. So the walking animation does indeed work, but this door opening will not work because we activate that in a script. And it doesn't really matter too much for now. You could technically have it incorporated into the animation itself, but let's see where we get to here. So let's go to our scripts folder. And how are we going to do this? Let's think. Let's create a new folder and just have it as doors. And let's create C# script wooden door. Now, the reason we might need different scripts for each door is simply because every door might open slower, quicker, in a different manner. So your timings may need to change a little bit. We could theoretically optimize it and keep it all in one script, and we might do that towards the end of this series. But for now, I just want to get things working and show you how easy it actually is to get all of this working. So first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to get rid of void update because we don't need it, and we don't need the annotations. What we do need is a couple of variables. Two of them are going to be audio, and one of them is going to be the pivot itself. So public game object door pivot, and then we'll have public audio source door open and public game object, not game object, sorry, audio source it'll be. Getting ahead of myself there. Door close semicolon. So this is all going to be done via a coroutine because we're controlling things using time here. So let's set up that. So a numerator, and we'll call it door opening, open close bracket, open curly bracket. So by default, we know that that walking animation plays, and we walk for 3 seconds. So yield, return, new, wait for seconds, and we'll wait for 3. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is the door open sound. So door open dot play, open close bracket, semicolon. Next thing we need to do is play the animation for the door pivot. So door pivot dot get component in spiky brackets, animator, open close bracket, dot play, and in brackets and quotes the name of the animation that you called it. So I am going to make sure I get this correct. I'm going to go to doors and I'm going to copy the actual name of the animation and place it in the script just so as there is no mistyping. What that means now is then we have to copy this line here and wait for 2 more seconds. So after we've walked through the door for 2 seconds, it means that we then carry on with the walking animation, and effectively after another couple of seconds we can play the door close sound. So rather than have this as 2 like we've just typed, we could probably have this as about 4, and then we can say instead of door open dot play, we can have this as door close dot play. And then obviously in void start we need to have the door opening reference there, so start coroutine, and in brackets door opening, open close bracket again, semicolon, and save the script. So to kind of go through what's happening here is as soon as this script loads, it's starting this coroutine. We're waiting for 3 seconds while the camera walks up to the door. We then play the door opening noise along with the door opening animation. We wait for 4 seconds while the camera walks through the door, and then we play the door close sound. So let's head back into Unity. Let's go to Game Object, Create Empty, and we'll have this as door control. And obviously this script will become much more in depth as we get further into the series. Let's go to the door script, attach it to door control, and then we just need to set those particular variables. So wooden door pivot is door pivot, door open, and door close. And I'm going to save this scene now in our scenes folder and have it as door transition. And hopefully, if we press play, everything should work as intended. Right, so there is a bit of a timing issue there, so we do need to kind of hurry things along. And what I'm thinking is we need to have our camera walk through the door just a little quicker. So let's go to our main camera, go to animation, and press record. And it's this section right here. So by 8 seconds, we are at the end. So what I think is we can either set this to be much further past the door, or we can shorten the length of time. I think we will make it so as our character is there by, in fact, I've just realized that isn't a good idea because that is frame 481. So make sure we're on the right frame, 480, and our character is there. So what that means is that they'll speed through the door a bit quicker now. So let's have a look and see if that looks okay. Okay, that seems relatively okay, but I think it's all about timing. You know, the timing of this isn't exactly perfect. Your game should be much more perfect than mine, but essentially, that's all there is to it. We now have the door transition scene in place. So next tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to create a script which allows us to literally move from one scene to another via this transition door. So we're going to set up a new room and we're going to make it so as we can interact with the door in our first room, get to this scene and get us into the next room. So until that next tutorial, guys, thank you very much for watching.